When you saw the news of the murder of these two officers, did you feel guilty?
Very guilty, yes.
So there are people out there, probably at senior positions in the police, are there?
Who would be very uncomfortable about this show tonight. Very uncomfortable.
In the mid-80s, Melbourne experienced a wave of violent bank robberies carried out by Victor Pearce and his ruthless Flemington crew.
How successful a bank robbery team were the Flemington crew?
As good as it got. The crew was probably about 10 or 12 of them, but each bank robbery was only 3 or 4.
What were they getting away with?
When they were on their game, they were bowling over banks, $150,000 to $300,000 cash, jumping counters, shotguns, balaclavas, and they were doing about a bank every 3 or 4 months.
And they were ruthless, weren't they?
Absolutely.
They were frightened of firing a shot.
Shots fired, and whoever was in the way was in the way.
Victor Pearce was the son of one-eyed Kath Pettingill, the matriarch of Melbourne's most notorious crime family.
Victor was very steely and very quiet, and he would stare you down.
By 1988, it was well known that Victor and the Flemington crew were behind the bank jobs. But proving it was difficult. The police were hell-bent on getting all his crew.
Well, the armed robbery squad at that stage had told us that they were going to start arresting the crew that we had been working on.
Malcolm Rosens has agreed to be interviewed for the first time on television about the deadly event he witnessed the day before Walsh Street. He says he can no longer live with the lies. A 27-year veteran, Rosens had a checkered career in the Victorian Police. He was a decorated officer, later a disgraced one, serving time for drug offences. But in 1988, he led an undercover surveillance team watching Victor Pearce's loyal lieutenant, his best mate, Graham Jensen. It was a Tuesday. Jensen was mowing the lawn. When the mower broke down, he drove to the local shops to buy a spark plug. Rosens' surveillance team followed him.
I had 2 in one car in the Shell service station.
So on the other side of the road there?
Yes, watching the car park here. Had one positioned up the Princess Highway and one in Webb Street. And I took this exit here.
At any stage, did you see Jensen with a weapon?
No, I did not.
What happened next would set off a chain of events that in 13 hours' time would result in the Walsh Street murders. What happened?
A member of my surveillance team came onto the police radio and told me that 2 or 3 armed robbery squad cars had just passed him at a great speed, heading towards our location where Jensen was. I hadn't had any communication with the armed robbery squad, so this was out of the blue that this was happening.
As Jensen sees the police coming in after him, he takes off in this direction and the police start firing. He only makes it about 50 metres before he hits this pole.
I heard a volley of shots fired.
So 7 or 8 shots, and I've waited in the car, not knowing what's going on. Nothing's come across the police radio.
I walked with one of the other operatives over to the car. I went past the driver's door, stopped. I had a look inside. I could see that Jensen was slumped in the seat and was deceased.
Did you see a weapon when you looked inside the car?
When I looked in the car at that time, there was no weapon.
You're absolutely sure of that?
100%.
What do you believe happened here 23 years ago?
I think the armed robbery shot and murdered a man here.
The police case has always been that Jensen pointed a weapon at them first before they fired with deadly effect. Rosens doesn't believe a word of it. And why? Because of what he says he witnessed next.
They started to walk back towards Jensen's car. One of them, I noticed, had a towel. They came to the car. One of the detectives put the towel on top of the car, and then it unfurled into the car, and I saw an object fall into the driver's side of the car.
Did you look into the car after you'd seen that object put into the car?
I later walked around and saw that there was a sawn-off rifle on the floor of the car now.
Was that sawn-off rifle there before?
No, definitely not. I believe that we as the surveillance unit had been used to find Jensen with the view of having him murdered.
They were executing somebody, weren't they?
They did, yes. And there's no doubt in my mind that this was premeditated, planned by the armed robbery squad, and that the surveillance unit were not made aware of it, and that we were the pawns being used to help find this person.
Did you or any of your colleagues record the fact that a weapon was planted?
No, we didn't.
And was that a deliberate decision?
Yes.
What do you think would have happened if that day you'd been bold enough, or if one of your colleagues had been bold enough to say, well, I want to put in my statement what I saw?
I really don't want to think about that, because really, when you think about it, if the armed robbery squad are prepared to shoot an unarmed man who they want to arrest, they would have no hesitation in taking the life of another policeman who wants to expose what's taken place.
You think they're capable of murdering a police officer to cover up their crime?
I believe if I would have stated something on the day, I would have been in peril from then on. It was safer to toe the line and do as everybody else wanted or expected you to do.
By making the decision to not reveal this, you were concealing a crime.
Yes, we were committing perjury.
Why does this matter? Why couldn't people just forget about this case, bury it, move on?
I think it's very tragic what took place. No matter what Jensen was doing, he was still a human being. He didn't need to be gunned down.
And then the next day, Victor Pearce and his Flemington crew mates went out and murdered 2 policemen in reprisal in what remains one of the greatest unsolved crimes in this state.
It's shocking, terrible.
You've got to understand who Graham Jensen was. He was Victor's best friend. They were as thick as thieves.
Do you believe that what happened the next day in Walsh Street was a reprisal for the killing of Jensen?
Oh, completely and utterly.
There's a dead bank robber. You go to bed that night. When did you hear about Walsh Street?
Well, I was up at 5 a.m. and I think the shooting took place just around that same time. There was the call that from D24 that shots were fired and two members were down. So I headed towards South Yarra.
What did you see?
A dark street, dawn coming up, a lonely divisional van and 2 members being worked on and rushed off to hospital, both dead.
2 young constables murdered. 22-year-old Stephen Tynan and his rookie partner, Damien Eyre, 20, who was just 6 months out of the police academy. Soon after, Damien's dad, himself a policeman, got a knock on the door.
2 local police called at our house.
Now, you've been a copper for a long time. You know what that means, don't you?
I knew there was something wrong.
What went through your mind?
That he was dead.
And when did you get the confirmation?
Within about 20 minutes.
Damien had dreamt of being a policeman from the time he was a boy.
That's all he ever wanted to do.
He and Stephen had gone to Walsh Street to investigate an abandoned stolen car. It was a setup. They were about to be ambushed.
Stephen Tynan was driving the van. Damien's got out of the van, walked around the back. Stephen Tynan got the door open. He was shot whilst still in the car. Damien had come round to the driver's side. He actually wrestled with some of them, and he, I believe, was getting the better. And his revolver was removed from its holster and he was shot in the back of the head.
Why does it hurt so, the shooting of a fellow officer?
I guess it's a fraternity. There's such a thing that was once very, very strong in the police department, not so much now, unfortunately, with the way of the world, but camaraderie and esprit de corps. It's a brotherhood, whether they're girls or boys, it's a brotherhood. And those words were very strong back then, and that fraternity was attacked.
Suspicion quickly fell on Victor Pearce, who'd vowed revenge for Jensen's killing. In the days following Walsh Street, he hid out in a different motel every night with his wife Wendy and their children. Wendy Pearce would soon become the key.
Well, she came from a very good family, and they were from South Melbourne, and she, at 16, fell in love with a boy down at the dance hall, and he was Victor Pearce.
Wendy was Victor's alibi, saying he was tucked up in bed with her when Walsh Street happened. But Colin McLaren, then a detective on the Walsh Street task force, knew she was lying. He began talking to her and won her trust. When Victor found out, he sent a hitman to kill his wife. That night, McLaren made a late-night call to her.
She was alone in the house, and somebody had given her a hot shot of heroin.
She was dying?
Yeah, absolutely. And Dave Sprague, who was the inspector in charge, was quick enough to get the Micah ambulance there and save her. When I finally got to her, she realised that her life was in threat, and it was all to do with her husband, and all the questions and all of the skirting around being a Crown witness in the previous 8 months came up to the forefront. She said, I want to be in witness protection.
And Wendy started singing?
Constantly for many months.
Wendy revealed all, starting with Victor's fake alibi.
What is the truth?
The truth is, Victor did get out of bed that night. He did leave the motel. I heard him go, and I heard him come back.
She detailed the armed robberies and the multiple murders, including Walsh Street. She'd heard Victor plotting revenge for his best mate's death with Peter McAvoy, one of the Flemington crew.
He spoke to Macca and he said, we'll knock him. He said, we'll knock the jacks. We'll kill him.
So you realised Wendy was an incredibly reliable and consistent witness?
Undoubtedly the best witness I've ever achieved as a detective.
Wendy said that on the night of the Walsh Street murders, Victor Pearce had left their motel.
Right, so he leaves at what time do you think that was?
That was roughly 11:30, between 11 and 11:30.
Right. And then when's the next time you hear from him?
When he come home, I back to the motel.
Right.
7:30 in the morning.
Did you ask him what he'd done?
Yes, I did.
And what did you ask him?
He just said to me that they're dead. He said they killed Jacks. They killed 2 policemen.
Yeah. Which two?
He didn't say policemen, he said Jacks.
Did you ask him any more details about it?
I said to him, who'd you do it with? He said Jed Macca.
When you saw that for the first time as a defence counsel, what was it like, seeing that kind of evidence?
Oh, well, well, it rocks you to your bootstraps, because you just say, well, if she's believed, if she swears up to this and she's believed, it's all over.
So there was, for a very brief moment, the perfect opportunity to put this case to rest, one of the most notorious cases in Australian criminal history.
Yep, not a doubt in the world about that.
And they blew it.
They blew it.
At various times, Underworld lawyer Andrew Fraser acted for all of the men eventually charged with the Walsh Street murders: Victor Pearce, Peter McAvoy, Trevor Pettingill and Anthony Farrell. When Farrell was arrested, Fraser visited him in the cells, where police secretly recorded their conversation.
You're in custody now, you don't have to talk to any police, you understand?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's about, you know, if you stop and think about it, it's about the worst murder that's ever been committed in this state. Right? And you're f***ing for the time being.
Did you murder the two police in Walsh Street?
Absolutely not.
2 decades on, Farrell's a pensioner living in Melbourne. Back then, he was a 19-year-old drug dealer and thief who hung around the Flemington crew, sometimes feeding Victor's dogs.
Did you have any inkling at all about what was going to happen that night?
None whatsoever.
I mean, a lot of people sitting here would say it's pretty convenient that you didn't know that. I mean, are you sure you didn't know anything?
I'm 100%. I was not privy to any plot to murder anybody.
All you've got to do is keep your trap shut.
Whatever Fraser's advice, the lawyer knew that the confessions of Wendy Pearce would sink them all.
Those blokes were gone a million. They were convicted and would never see the light of day again.
So
Any of them.
You accept that if Wendy had testified, it would have convicted your clients?
Not a doubt in the world.
With Wendy Pearce in witness protection, the police and prosecution now had a star witness to bring here to the court, a near unbeatable case. But just before the trial of the 4 Walsh Street accused, including Wendy's husband Victor, the police crew that had been nurturing Wendy for more than a year was replaced.
We'd worked with her for nearly 15 or 18 months. And for some reason, that was the decision that was made, and Wendy instantly started to go adverse.
Was it the wrong decision?
Completely the wrong decision.
How angry were you?
Livid. Disillusioned. Appalled.
Wendy turned from a star prosecution witness to a hostile one. The jury never got to hear her explosive tapes.
This is the most notorious slaying of police in Victoria since Ned Kelly. And a decision was made 23 years ago that effectively killed the case.
Absolutely.
She's going to dish the main player's heads up on a plate. All she's got to do is jump in the witness box at the trial, repeat her performance from the committal, and it's all over. Why would you rock the boat at all?
If we'd had Wendy Pearce's evidence, certainly 2 of those people would have been still in jail today.
How did it feel as you watched Victor Pearce and McAvoy walk out the dock?
Probably the hardest day of my police career.
Was it disillusioning for you as a copper?
I went away and decided to resign. I just didn't want to be a cop anymore. I didn't want to be a detective anymore, which is what I loved. And all I wanted to do was take my bat and ball and just go home.
Excuse me?
How do you feel about the Walsh Street verdict?
Victor Pearce walked free. 11 years later, he was killed in a gangland murder. Anthony Farrell was also acquitted. He says that in the mid-90s, police pulled him into a car, telling him he was going to die.
And with that, I felt a cold bit of metal at the back of my ear. And he's forcing it into the back of my head.
It was a gun?
It was a pistol, yeah. And he's saying to me, do you know what this is? So I said, yeah, it's a gun. He said, that's right. He said, well, today we're playing Russian and all that. and this is the last day of your life. And with that, he took the barrel out and spun it and put it back in and cocked it and then put it back to my head.
Did he pull the trigger?
He pulled the trigger.
Was there a round in there?
I didn't know at the time.
You thought there was?
Obviously, yeah, because this guy was serious.
And did he do it again?
He done it again. And with each fresh air shot that he let go, he'd make a comment. Oh, you are lucky, aren't you? Oh, you're the luckiest little maggot on the earth. The fourth shot, the fifth. Well, when you know a little bit about handguns, you know the pistols take 6 bullets. So we've already gone through 5. There's only 1 left. And he says, well, this is it. This is the day you die. And with that he went, bang! And he said it verbally.
What'd you do?
Well, I was praying. I said a little prayer. I thought I was gone.
As for brutal career criminal Peter McAvoy, he now lives in New South Wales. In the police tapes, Wendy Pearce places McAvoy at Walsh Street with Victor. Last year, he threatened New South Wales police, saying, the sweetest thing, and I'm sorry to have to repeat these words to you, I know you'd heard them already, but the sweetest thing I ever heard was the police officer's last words while he was dying.
Yeah.
Do you think that was a reference to your son?
Yes.
There are now calls for an inquest into all the events surrounding the death of Graham Jensen and the murders of 2 fine young constables at Walsh Street. The most critical evidence of all would be Wendy Pearce's. Tonight, this heartfelt plea from a father to a mother.
Wendy, I know that you're aware of the truth of what happened in Walsh Street that night, so I appeal to you to please come forward and tell the truth.